airplane you're looking at is the Shark. And you might be able to tell a distinctive quality of the airplane if you look at the tail on this airplane. If that doesn't look like a shark fin, you haven't been paying enough attention to creatures of the sea. But this is a creature of the air. I'm Dan Johnson talking to Chris Horsten today about Shark. Chris, tell me a little bit about yourself first. How is it you're involved with this particular airplane, and do you do some other things in aviation that we would know you for?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Well, we just love aviation and everything about it. So we've kind of tried to build a business model around satisfying a number of needs and picking up on a bunch of different opportunities. So in addition to the Shark, we represented the Bush Cat in Canada. Hoping to do that again at some point. And then our other big seller is Canardia Avionics, which is a line of avionics from Europe that is used in a lot of light sport airplanes. And then we also represent Dennis over in DeLand for the Aerolite in Canada. So we picked up a bunch of different...
Pretty wide range there. The
do.
last one you mentioned is a Part 103.
It is.
This one is a Mosaic capable airplane with retractable gear, and we'll get into that. And the Canardia Avionics are very nice flat screen displays. If you haven't seen those people, you want to get out and have a look at them. But that's a bunch of stuff you're doing. And we're down here in Florida now. We're at the Spruce Creek Airport, my home base, on a beautiful fall day here. But you are from a place a little bit north of here some of the time.
Yes.
Tell me how you manage that.
Well, I'll tell you, it is definitely a job in itself to manage because weather is always a factor for us getting to and from. But the other base is in Toronto, Canada, or just outside of Toronto.
Okay.
And so, we have to bring this airplane down and we have to get a vehicle down here. So that involves a flight to DeLand and then hopping on a commercial flight and then going home, picking up the Shark, waiting for some weather and flying it back down. And then I got to do all that in reverse when we, head back to Canada again. So that applies to Sun and Fun, Oshkosh, any of those trips we make where we need a vehicle and we both need to be there. We have to do this.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So snowbirding is enough of a challenge if you're just hauling yourself and your clothes and your, books or whatever. Having to get airplanes back and forth, okay, that's a lot to do, but
it is.
But you're smiling about it, so I think you probably enjoy it. Here, tell me a little bit about the basics of the airplane. Let's start at the nose and go to the back. We'll skip the engine for now. We'll come back to that. But tell me how she's made. Tell me about the gear. Tell me about the control mechanisms.
Well, it's a retractable gear airplane. It's all made out of carbon fiber, with a Kevlar cockpit area, which is, we tell people that's like F1 race car technology. It's for crash protection, and it's proven itself. So we know that it works really well, and it's very, very strong in maintaining the shape and structure of the cockpit area. And then we have a constant speed prop. The plane can come standard with an electric adjustable version, but we usually recommend, and most people opt now for the hydraulic version, because if you're going to do any kind of cranking and banking, the hydraulic reacts much quicker than an electric prop, which is kind of like a slow, movement like that. So we usually recommend that. That's one of the upgrades that almost everybody gets.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I would guess that carries a pretty good price premium over electric, does it?
I think it's about $2,500, $3,500 more.
Okay, so not
terrible.
given the overall. We're talking about a $300,000 airplane here, basically.
Yes.
Already, all with all the bells and whistles. I'm gathering, right?
Yes.
Okay, so at that, yes, that's not a great deal of extra. Okay, and what is the aircraft made out of? What is its construction materials, Chris?
It's almost pretty much completely carbon fiber, other than the cockpit area. Some of the other materials used are, as I mentioned earlier, about 3D printing. So we have, I believe we have over 100 parts that are 3D printed in the airplane. They're all non-structural parts, so we don't have to worry about them breaking or whatever. But they do use advanced filaments to get the strength they need, and some of them are for little fittings and little door latches. There's a fitting on the nose gear to hold the door. So there's a whole pile of different ways, and this just allows the company to develop changes and new features much quicker. So that whole process is accelerated by having that 3D print technology. They can just whip off a part, test it out, and then go back to the drawing board if they need to or whatever, rather than going to some manufacturing and forming and machining and all the rest of it.
Sure. Wow, that's great.
It is. It's a godsend to have that for sure.
So I noticed a lot of people, we had quite a group of folks looking over the airplane when we first got started, and virtually every one of them looked at your shock absorber down there. Now that's not a 3D printed item, that would be a structural item.
Yep.
That's fiberglass, I believe.
It is fiberglass.
How does that work for you?
You know what? It's a lot of people look at it and they kind of scratch their heads and they're like, oh, that's an interesting thing. Well, it's been well engineered. And we've never had one that I'm aware of ever break. So it's a very durable part. I'm guessing that the travel and the forces on it are not that great, so that it's
it's quite a thick thing.
It
I
is.
noticed,
It
yes.
is. It's very.
But it's also a thick thing that's constantly flexing.
Yeah.
So you would think
On
that
the ground.
the back end of that, well, of course, only while you're on the ground.
But don't forget, there's a spring inside of the gear leg too.
In addition, okay,
Right.
okay.
So it's not like it's taking all of the load.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's probably a lot, I just picked on that one thing because we can see that easily and so forth, but I'm guessing there's a lot of neat tricks. And one of them you pointed out here that I tried to shoot a good picture of it is, well, you've got a retractable gear airplane and you've got a low wing airplane. Now, I know we've got, this is about the landing gear and what position it's in, because from the cockpit, you can't see any of these gear, of course. That's common in most airplanes, so they use lights and whatnot. This has got a little extra trick here with this little circle that's right in front of my hand, which your camera won't see it now, but I'll show you an image of it. And what's that for?
So, we're very concerned about safety in this airplane. We've got so many safety features, and that's just another one of them, where you can just, by glancing out the window after you've retracted the gear, you can see that the gear is up, and you can also see by a little light that comes on that the gear door is properly closed. And that's on both wings. And then in the tunnel that's between your legs, there's another window, and you can see the nose gear come up inside of there too. So,
I mean, this is not an indication or a TV screener, so this is a visual image of it. You can actually see down in there.
It's a window.
Very clever little idea. Of course, you said, well, you can do it on the other side. That's because this is a tandem aircraft, of course. You can see out both sides of the aircraft. You're seated in the center of the lateral CG, so you're always got great visibility out of both sides.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about flying the airplane, Chris. Tell me how she flies. Give me your basic numbers, like if we're going to go do a demo flight, which we'll do here in a bit. What kind of takeoff you'll have, what kind of roll, what kind of climb, what kind of speeds will we see, how is the handling? Run through a little short verbal demo for me.
Yeah, so we take off with flaps 1.
Out of how many?
Out of 3 notches of flaps.
Okay.
In fact, I personally rarely, if ever, use flaps 3. Maybe if I'm by myself and it's a fairly calm day, but otherwise flaps 2 is more than enough. And if you fly an airplane that goes really fast, but then has very slow speeds at the other end, it's a little disconcerting coming out of that fast speed regime into the slow speed. So, the plane is fine to land on flaps 1 or flaps 2. So that's kind of where I feel the most comfortable flying it. But a typical takeoff, flaps 1, we'll get the nose gear up off the ground just to, look after the nose gear, and then it'll just fly itself off. I believe,
what speed are we at then?
I think it's flying off about 45, 50 knots.
Okay.
And then, again, I'm looking out the window. I'm not really looking at my EFIS at that point.
As you should be, but
as
you
I
got to
should
pay
be.
attention to the speeds, of course. So.
Yeah, but it'll tell you, like, when it's starting to go. And because it's got a Garmin screen and even the Dynan screen, both will tell you if you're approaching stall. It'll start to beep and chirp at you. So, ideally you don't want to hear that on takeoff.
Ideally, yes,
right. So we take off, and then right away at about 65 knots to 70 knots, you're retracting the flaps.
Okay.
Because there's a max flap speed
Which
of
is
65.
65. Okay.
There's a tolerance there for a little bit more, but they want you transitioning at the 65 knots kind of.
So that's shortly
range.
after takeoff. Then.
Yes,
you want to
very
get those
quickly.
flaps up. Yeah.
And then the gear comes up, right away afterwards. Now, currently marked at 70. I believe we can go a little higher now. So we're retracting the gear somewhere around the 70, 75 knots range. And then we're climbing out at about 85 to 90 knots.
Okay.
And that's giving me, you know, by myself, about 12 to 1,300 feet per
Oh,
minute.
wow, okay.
With
Now,
the
this is
passenger.
now what engine and you're getting that performance from?
Sure. So
I
we're
left
on a
that out, but now go back to it.
912 ULS, the 100 horsepower
Okay.
naturally aspirated engine with the constant speed prop. So that's full fine pitch. It's
So
turning
100
about,
horsepower, you're getting 12 or 1,300 solo. I get it, but
Mm-hmm.
still, that's pretty impressive out of 100 horsepower.
Yep, it is. Like I said earlier, I believe this is the most efficient platform you can buy with the 912 engine in it, the kind of performance you can get out of it. So yeah, I mean, it's a great rate of climb. And then with a second person, typically around 750, 800.
Still quite generous. So.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And then, yeah, once we get to altitude, I don't always wait to get up to whatever. I'll bring the prop speed back because the max continuous on the Rotax is 5,500. So I'll bring it back to just a little bit below that, 5,490, 5,480, and continue my climb because my best climb will happen there with, you know, full manifold pressure and that. And of course, as you climb on a naturally aspirated engine, your manifold pressure is going to come down and your power is going to diminish as you go. But you know, I'll get up to, you know, 7,000 feet, 8,000 feet in about, I don't know, 10 minutes or so or less.
Okay.
5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. I've never really calculated it out, but it's pretty quick. You know, if you want to go much higher, then you know, obviously it's going to start to climb less. When you get up into the, you know, 9, 10, 11,000, you're probably more, you know, 300 feet per minute kind of thing, 400 feet per minute maybe, if you're solo. So yeah, that's typical of what I get. If I'm on a long cross country, I'm cruising at 75, 8,500 feet normally.
Okay. And what kind of speed are you seeing then?
I set my power and my prop to achieve about 140 to 145 knots indicated.
Okay.
You know,
So
obviously
this is
at
a
higher-
comfortable cruising speed for you then,
Yes.
140, 145 knots?
Yes, I mean, typically I'm flying between Toronto and Florida or Oshkosh or somewhere where it's 2 or 3 hours in the air at least, and so you know, I'm with 2 or 3 hours of gas in this plane isn't going to break the bank. So I'd rather go faster than, you know, drop down to 4.5 gallons an hour. I'll burn 5.5, whatever. I don't care.
And that 5.5 gallons per hour is what gets you the 145 knots?
Yeah.
Okay.
At lower altitudes, indicated as you go higher,
Yeah,
obviously
of course,
that
you
comes
get
down and
true
your
advantages and
yeah,
so forth.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, sure. Okay, so now let's start to put a little bit of a wrap on it by talking about how is the handling, how do you feel about it, and then talk to me about slow flight and stall.
So that's a very interesting question because that is probably the of all my time in the Shark, the least amount of my time has been spent doing those kinds of things because it has a phenomenal autopilot and I've never had one before and I love using it and I'm always going somewhere.
Spoiled by autopilot.
I am
huh?
spoiled. However, having said that, you know, I've been in the plane with a couple of other pilots. One of our customers is a former F-16 guy. He's an instructor. He's very competent in his Shark. He knows its capabilities very well, and he's shown me some of the corners, or pushed it out some of the corners of the envelope, just to show me what it can do. You know, for the benefit of me showing my clients.
Sure, sure.
Unfortunately, the last time we did that, he made me sick because I don't do G's very well. But we did something called a whifferdille. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
So we did those. We, you know, I think that's probably like a chandelle. Is that similar to a chandelle?
Well, chandelle is an accelerated 180-degree turn.
And then does it come back or something?
No,
he did
just,
something that kind of came
just
back.
a 180.
And back.
but
Okay.
The falling leaf thing is what he was doing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we did that. We did a couple other maneuvers. Then we did some stalls. The stall, I'll be honest, I was afraid to do it because I hadn't had a proper check ride to do that at the factory. You know, being honest here.
That's all right. Appreciate your honesty.
It's probably
too
not,
many people don't do that often
Yeah.
enough, I believe.
Yeah.
I think you should do a stall on virtually every flight.
Absolutely. Oh, every flight?
Every flight.
Okay. Well, yeah, good practice. Why not? So
It's the one thing you want to know when you're coming in for a landing is I don't want to be looking at you said you don't always look at the gauges. Most pilots don't. You should be looking out there, but you got to then have a feel for what's going to happen.
exactly.
And one way to do that is stall every time. Anyway, that's
Exactly.
enough, but continue on, please.
So Paul took me up. We went to some altitude, and he proceeded to show me some stalls. And I was actually a little embarrassed because it was not nearly as dramatic as I thought it might be. Some people had described, and I've actually seen the plane stalling like at the factory as it flew overhead. There was a test pilot doing something on the day I was there, one of the days. And you know, some people say, well, it has a tendency to drop one wing a little bit. We didn't drop any wing when we did ours, so I don't know where that comes from or why, but we didn't drop the wing at all. I believe a flaps 3 is a more aggressive brake than 1 or 2 or clean, but
Logically, it would be.
yeah. I mean, did we actually do? I don't think we did a 3. In fact, Paul said if you're doing demos, probably don't do a flaps 3 stall with a customer if it's going to brake like that. You might upset them. Might upset yourself. I don't know. Like I said, I've never done that one, so I can't speak to it. But I do have videos of it, and I've seen what it looks like in the video, and it doesn't look bad. So it's
You
just
said
my
a
own
stall speed
fear.
earlier, so tell me that stall speed.
Yeah.
We're talking about stall a lot here. I want to focus on what speed you're at when it brakes.
So dirty, they say about 37 knots.
37 knots. I want to
Yeah.
repeat that because you're looking at this thing and goes, well, I see it can go fast. But 37 knots,
It's slow.
A couple of these other fellows that were here kind of went, what?
Yeah,
37? They
I
almost
know.
didn't believe you.
Let me tell you, when we were doing our stalls last month, I was like, come on, please, just get this over with and brake. And it was really hard to get it to brake. So yeah, it's a pretty benign stall. No real issue. We even did a power on stall, and it was pretty much a non-issue as well. Yeah, I mean, all those things are fairly straightforward for the average pilot. I wouldn't say there's anything there that is, you know, beyond the scope of your average sport pilot certificate, you know, kind of guy. Where I think you know, more of the complication comes in is in the complications, is in the prop, is in the gear. When I was at the factory, I pretty much spent almost all of my time doing circuits around the pattern.
Ah, okay.
Right? And so that gave us, you know, an opportunity to build up some muscle memory, you know, and okay, you do this, these are the speeds you're looking for, these are the things you got to watch out for, and we just did it over and over and over. And, you know, by the time we got dialed in, you know, you could be around the pattern in like literally 3 minutes. It was very quick.
You're busy 3 minutes then, though.
Yes, it is. I mean, you're literally gear up, you turn crosswind, and as soon as you turn downwind, you're pulling the power back and slowing down because you're already at 120 knots. Right? So you got to slow down to get those speeds again, to get your flaps out and get your gear out again for your landing. And so you can keep your patterns pretty tight, which is good, safety. Or if you really want to drag them out, sometimes I'll do that too and drag it in and have a long approach. Whatever.
And what is a typical approach? In other words, let me ask you a question that I know a lot of people are going to wonder. Well, what kind of field can you take it into? Because people are looking at this and going, fine, on a big runway like the one we're standing near here, no problem. You can land a 747 here, not really, but that kind of, you know, bigger equipment. But a lot of people are going, well, yeah, but I might want to fly this out of my neighbor's field or something.
Yeah.
So what kind of numbers would you use for takeoff and landing distances?
So you're going to be off the ground in, you know, between 400 and 600 feet, depending on your
Very
your
quick
load.
then.
It's very quick. Yeah, gets up and off fairly rapidly. You know, a good way to look at it is you're right. In the United States, in Canada, we have nice asphalt runways. They're long, they're wide, they're nicely maintained. In Europe, they have a lot of grass strips, and there's people operating off a lot of short grass strips over there. And so this plane really shines in Europe. I mean, most of our sales since its inception were in Europe, and they're flying it off grass strips. The factory strip is I don't want to say horrible, but it's a very worn down, challenging. Yeah, it's gotten pretty rough. It's not grass, but it's pretty rough. And you know, this plane handles it well. There's no real challenges. You know, I mean, do you want to fly off a 1,000-foot strip on a regular basis? You could.
No, I was mainly asking if you needed to get into someplace and you went, that's kind of short, but this airplane will handle quite a short
handle
run.
it, and you know, especially if you're going to go flaps 3. You know, you're down to the flaps 3 speed is 55 knots. And then when you're touching down, you're going to be, pretty darn slow.
Yeah, you're going to 40, 45 knots. You'll
Yeah.
be touching the ground. So.
Yeah, so it's going to, and if you're on grass, it's going to stop even quicker.
Okay, so let's. That's a lot of information. We want to go fly the airplane now. I'll have some more to report in my writing, but in this video here, I want to kind of wrap it up now. Give me how people can get a hold of you, Chris, to find out more about the Shark, when it's available, what it costs, what kind of equipment they can choose,
Sure.
what kind of licensing they'll need. They want to ask you all those kinds of questions. Where do they go find you, Chris?
Well, you can find me through either one of our websites. There's an info at address, so info@sportaircraftcanada.com or info@Mach9Aero.
Mach9Aero,
Yep.
okay. That's the U.S. one?
That's the U.S. one,
Okay.
yeah. We have a U.S. DeLand phone number. You can call it 689-274-7171, and then that's probably the best one to reach me at. They all come to the same phone, so it is these days. Easy to get a hold of me. Some of the big choices people are making in this airplane are the avionics. So whether it's Dynon or Garmin, your choice. We do both, and there's most of the plane is already there. There's a lot of stuff that's already included. There isn't really a lot of options other than cosmetic ones. The prop, the avionics. That's largely the bulk of it.
Okay.
So yeah. We just want to try to help you pick the one that looks the best for you. I mean, you can change the wheel colors, the seat belt colors, all that stuff is, up to you. But the airframe, it is what it is, right? And it works.
All right, very good. Well, that's the Shark from Shark Aero. More information will be available in the article, but we're going to go fly the airplane now and learn a little bit more about it. Thank you for joining Chris Horsten and myself here at Spruce Creek Fly-In for a review of the Shark. You can learn lots more about all kinds of affordable aviation on bydanjohnson.com, now part of the Firecrown Publishing Network. Thanks so much for joining us here today at Spruce Creek.
Great, let's go have some fun.
All right.